I have a pair of pants that I love so much that I'm actually starting to wear through them. So I'm on a mission to find a sewing pattern that's going to make me a pair of pants very similar or something that I like equally as much for when, God forbid, my favourite black Bec Bridge business casual pants finally have their day. Today I'm going to start with the KNOWME by the Stitch Fitz pattern 2053, which is distributed by McCall's in Australia and available to buy at Spotlight. I'm not going to talk through how you actually sew clothes using a sewing pattern, but there are a few instructions that I found really open to interpretation, and I did have to do some troubleshooting, so I will talk you through what I did in case that's useful. And as a disclaimer, there is a YouTube video that the pattern maker uploaded where theoretically they walk through how to make this pattern step by step. I personally found that it didn't add much more than what's already included in the written instructions. And they also made the interesting decision to make their pants out of a completely white fabric, which is a deranged thing to do if you're making a sewing tutorial, to be honest, but that's fine. So what I'm going to go through in this video, to start with, I'll talk about what you need to buy to make this pattern. Then I'll walk through the sizing of the pattern, because like all commercial sewing patterns, the sizing's absolutely cooked. Then I'll talk you through making the pants and some of the troubleshooting I did, and then I'll give my final thoughts on the pattern and you can see what the pants look like. So to get started, I'm going to pass over to myself from yesterday, who managed to export everything in the video except the intro. What do you need to make these pants? About 2.5 meters of fabric. I used a fabric. I actually have no idea what's in it. It feels like a cotton linen blend, but it honestly could be 100% synthetic, and I don't care to find out. You'll need a 7-inch zipper, which is going to be hidden inside the fly, so just buy a regular cheap zipper in a vaguely similar colour to your fashion fabric. 2 1.5 centimeter buttons. What isn't mentioned on the envelope is that one of those buttons is decorative. It's on the front of the pant, poking out of the little flap. If you don't want to make the flap, you don't need this button. But the other button goes inside the fly and therefore needs to be a flat button that should sit flush with your waistband. 1 hook and bar closure. My bar is 18 millimeters long, which worked perfectly. I would say 2 centimeters would be the ideal length for the bar of your hook and bar closure, but I wouldn't go smaller than 1.5 centimeters, and I definitely don't think you can go bigger than 2.5. They've said to buy about half a yard of lining fabric. This is not necessary. It is just for the pocket bags. So if you want your pocket bags to be made out of like a thin cotton material, then go ahead. I made my pocket bags out of my fashion fabric. You can probably cut out the pocket bags from the scraps of your fashion fabric, so I don't think you'd have to buy more than the 2.5 meters. But if I'm being completely honest, the reason that I made the pocket bags out of my fashion fabric is because I hadn't pre-shrunk my fabric. I know you're meant to, but I wanted to make the pants immediately and I didn't want to wait. So I didn't want to sew in a second type of fabric into the pants. That would introduce the risk of putting your pants into the wash and the pockets shrinking at a different rate to the rest of it and distorting the pants. So I just made them all out of the same fabric and it worked fine. The reason you might not want to do this is if your fashion fabric is bulky, especially for the pockets on the back. The pockets on the front, the bulk probably wouldn't show up anyway because they're quite baggy, but you don't want to create too much bulk if you can avoid it. The interfacing I used was a medium weight fusible interfacing. I honestly don't like using fusible interfacing, and the only reason I used it here is because in theory it doesn't shrink in the wash, and as I mentioned before, I wasn't pre-washing my fabrics, so I didn't want to have to pre-wash some sew-in interfacing. That being said, I do believe that it distorts in the wash. I've had projects kind of ruined by the interfacing distorting in collars and stuff when I put it through the wash a few times. And my understanding is that people who make more professional looking clothes at home avoid using it entirely. If you're going to make these pants and you want to do the best job you can, use sew-in interfacing. But yeah, the fusible interfacing is what they recommend. Finally, it's not mentioned on the envelope, but I thought it would be useful to mention that I used almost 100 meters of thread. That's including some of the mistakes I had to go back and redo. If you have an overlocker, you will likely use about 100 meters of thread But if you're prone to mistakes like I am, or if you're finishing your edges using a zigzag stitch on your machine, you should get 200 meters of thread. Another part of the video that didn't export. So the sizing for this pattern's a little bit cooked, but that's kind of to be expected. I did take my measurements and it said I had a size 14 waist and a size 18 hips. I'm usually a size 8 to 10 in Australia, so I kind of thought that it was probably wrong. I've made a few patterns recently in a size 10 and they were all a bit too big. So I just decided to make a size 10 in these pants and assumed it would be fine. I was wrong and I should have gone with my waist measurement and made a size 14. I say I should have gone off a size 14 instead of a size 18. Usually they say to pick the hip measurement when you're making pants. I usually find that with these baggy pants, it's the waistband that ends up way too baggy, and that's kind of annoying to fix. So that's why I said I should go off my waist measurement, but you could also go off the hip measurement if you wanted and see if it works. What is kind of crazy though is that I am a size 8 to 10 in ready to wear clothing in Australia. If you are any larger than a size 10 in Australia, then you would need to buy the plus size pattern, which is so unexpected that I imagine it would create a lot of issues. Like I usually just go in and get the smaller size packet and then measure to see what size I should make. That's just absurd. Yeah. The sizing is cool, but whatever. All right, on to making the pants. So step 1 was interfacing. If you want to use a fusible interfacing, then what I recommend you do to get the best result is set up your ironing board in front of your TV and put on the Desperate Housewives of Salt Lake City. This will make sure that you stay put. Hold pressure and heat on the pattern pieces for as long as possible. And this is really easy to do when you're watching Lisa fight with Jen Shaw.
Roll your mother eyes and look over there one more time, I'll drown you, bitch.
And don't use steam. Step number 2 is doing the pleats on the front of the pattern. It took so much brain power for me to figure out what they want me to do here, and it's literally instruction number 2. They say on the inside, bring broken lines together and stitch. By on the inside, what they mean is to bring the fabric together so that the bulk or the pleat sits on the inside, so on the wrong side of the fabric. Bring broken lines together. What's the issue with that? There are 3 broken lines and there's 1 solid line. I don't know why they did it like this. What they mean is just sew the pleats, right? Like bring the 2 lines for each pleat together and stitch them closed up until the small dot. What they should have done is have each pleat drawn out with 1 solid line and 1 dotted line. And they could have said, bring the solid line to the dotted line, right sides together, and stitch until the small dot. That is how that instruction should have been written, and that is what they mean. Instruction 7, hooray, we are making a fly. I hate making pants because I find flies really intimidating, and I've made them before. Like, really all it is just following the instructions, but when you look at this, it looks so intimidating and like such a headache. And the biggest piece of advice I can say is just that the instructions will tell you how to do it if you just follow them really slowly. Maybe look up videos for making flies if you get stuck. Numbers 8 to 10 were making this little flap. I love this little flap. I think the little flap is so cute and fun. Unfortunately, I had to deconstruct the waistband and I forgot to put the flap back in. So my pants are flapless now. Very sad. Also means I have 2 spare buttons that I didn't use, which is really annoying. Number 12, when they say reinforce, they mean using a 2 to 2.5 length stitch. Just stitch along the square. Just stitch out that square. From number 12 to 19, they're telling you how to make the pockets in the back. With hindsight, I would tell you, hand on my heart, I don't think the pants need these pockets. I can only fit my hands up until my knuckles. I can't fit my phone in this pocket, so it's useless. What am I going to put in a back pocket if not my phone? You couldn't fit a wallet. I wouldn't put my keys in them because you can't secure them closed. Honestly, if I was remaking the pants, I'd skip the pockets. I did make them wrong. I messed up the welt. I guess the instructions weren't clear. In my defense, I watched the instructional video to watch what she does. It was so unclear, I managed to screw up the welt. So I only take partial blame for that one. But yeah, they do look quite ugly. If you are making these cursed pockets, they should look like this, not like this. 21 is stitching the crotch seam. If you're not too familiar with making pants, an easy way to find the crotch seam is to take the double notches on the back pieces, put them right sides together, and then that should reveal a unstitched curved edge, and that's what you're stitching. You're stitching the back to the back and the front to the front. Number 23 to 26 is making and sewing on the carriers, which to my understanding are just really thick belt loops. The only notes I have for these instructions are that edge stitch just means stitch close to edge. And when you're pinning the carriers on, you actually don't have to find the big dots and pin them exactly where the pattern maker wants you to. I couldn't be bothered pulling out the pattern pieces to try and figure out where those big dots were because I hadn't marked them. Just eyeball it. Just look at the pants and eyeball where you put them, and as long as they look even to your eyes, they'll look even to other people. We're up to the waistband. Yay! I had used up almost all of my mental capacity at this point, but the few neurons that were still firing in my brain were switched on enough to look at the pants and think, this looks child-sized. And so sure enough, I tried on the pants and they didn't fit. They were way too small. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I should have made a size 14 because I guess when pattern companies decide what a size is, they go a size 10, about 64 centimeters maybe. They just choose an arbitrary number. If you've made a similar mistake, what I did was I took apart the pleats, I undid them. Because of the cursed pockets that I hate on the back, there wasn't a lot to get out of the back pleats, which means that most of the space created came from the front. Then I redid the waistband. I will show you what it looks like. Probably hard to see. It's a rectangle basically. What I did, because I'm a genius, is I cut it at the center back and added just a bit of craft paper in the middle. I didn't mess around with numbers and try to figure out exactly how much I needed to expand it by. I just added a chunk that was big enough that I was confident the waistband wouldn't be too small. And when you're attaching the waistband, if it was too long, then once you get to the right side of the fly, after you sew closed the overhang, just cut the excess off. After I undid the pleats and I put the pants on, I held the pants on me and repinned the pleats. Then what you do is you follow the instructions, pinning the waistband on starting at the left fly. And I guess, final reveal, this is the result. The pants do fit me and they look fine. Because most of the extra room I created came from the front, not the back, because the front darts were a lot bigger than the back darts were. This means the side seam actually lays too far back on my hips. And because of this, the pockets don't sit where they're meant to sit. Look, I have pants that look worse, that I have paid a lot of money for from stores. So I'm not too upset about the fit of my final project. So what do I think about these pants? I think if I'd made a size 14, I'd actually be pretty stoked with how this turned out. That being said, I don't know that I'd necessarily love them, and that's because of the waistband. As you might remember, the waistband pattern piece is a flat rectangle. This is lazy pattern making. The upper edge of your waistband needs to be smaller than the lower edge of your waistband because your waist is the smallest part of your abdomen, and that smallest part does not continue to be the same measurement for 4 centimeters. Basically, this means if you're making a proper waistband, you either need to construct it in parts, put darts into it, or you need to draw the darts onto the pattern, reduce them, and then draw out your new pattern, which would lead to having a curved pattern piece. What they've done here is create a waistband that will either fit your waist at the top of the waistband or at the bottom. For me, I have a pear body shape or something, and on me it's very obvious that the waistband is square. If it fits you at the top, it means the bottom of the waistband is going to be too small and it's going to squeeze you in. You might think that will make you look snatched. It will just look bad, especially from the side. Because the inseam of these pants is so long, it can make you look like you have a pouch, which is the second issue that I don't love about these pants. The inseam is genuinely so long. Like the pants I'm wearing are meant to be 4 sizes too small for me, and still the inseam is way too long. What you end up with is a crotch that sits way too low, which in pants this baggy makes it look like you're wearing pajamas. So in summary, here's what I'd recommend you do. Measure your waist and cut out whatever size corresponds to that waist measurement. Skip the back pockets. If you really want the waistband to fit, what I'd do is put some darts into it. If you know how to, you could mess around with the pattern to try and make it curved, like draw some darts into the pattern that will bring in the amount you need brought in and then reduce them from the pattern. If you did that, you'd end up with a curved waistband piece. However, it does mean you'd need to make 2 waistband pieces and sew them together at the top. I would bet if you went to your wardrobe right now and you pulled out a nice pair of pants that you like, that's how they've done the waistband. I would be so shocked if any nice professional pants were made by cutting one rectangle for the waistband and folding it in half. That would be absurd. So yeah, there are my thoughts. Overall, I think 7 out of 10. It's a pretty good pattern. It's just lazy in all the ways that commercial patterns are lazy nowadays and is really poorly sized. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm gonna keep making these videos as I keep making more pants. If you have any recommendations for patterns, please comment below. Bye!